Hello. I'm coming to you a little bit early. I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. Normally I record later on Wednesday, but Cheryl and I have holiday plans, Christmas plans, and so I wanted to get this out early. Uh, there are a couple of things that have come together this week to help form the message that I want to share with you today in this episode. The first is a reflection by Dr. Vernon Grounds, who was the president of Denver Seminary when I was a student there back in the 1970s. Dr. Grounds wrote a devotional entitled Singing with the Enemy, in which he reflects on Stanley Weintraub's book, Silent Night. This is a story often told. Early in World War I, in December of that year, Allied and German soldiers stopped their killing and began to fraternize. So Dr. Grounds says, let me share an excerpt from that account. Again, this is from Weintraub's book. The night was filled with sights and sounds too remarkable to credit one's senses. Daylight came too soon. It took the suspension of disbelief to accept the reality that the hateful enemy hungered for Bruderschaft. For most British soldiers, the German insistence on celebrating Christmas was a shock after the propaganda about Teutonic bestiality, while the Germans had long dismissed the British as well as the French as soulless and materialistic and incapable of appreciating the festival in the proper spirit. Earlier in these episodes, I used the metaphor, the analogy of a World War I battle scene to describe our cultural landscape. So you can imagine how my ears perked up when I read what Dr. Grounds had written and sharing from Weintraub's book. Here's a real-life incident from World War I, where soldiers from both sides laid down their arms, climbed out of their trenches, and met each other face to face. In the quote that I just read for you, it suggests that the Germans had certain beliefs about the French and the British, and the French and the British had certain beliefs about the Germans, all around Christmas and whether the other side had any kind of soul or Christian attributes and character to them. What they discovered once they climbed out of the trenches and gathered together in no man's land was that these were real human beings, and these were people who celebrated the birth of the Savior, Christ. The other thing that I read this week, or actually I didn't read it, I heard it, fits in so nicely with this, and I wanted to share it before this celebration of Christmas on Friday. Monday afternoon, I was listening to a podcast called Church Pulse Weekly. Carrie Neweth, David Kinnaman interview people. They've been doing this back since March. And this week's interview was with a pastor from Oklahoma by the name of Craig Groeschel. And Craig was reflecting on his experiences in his church, both with just people, I guess you would want to say lay people in his church, but also people on his staff. And one quote really struck me from what Groeschel said. He said that what he experienced was extremes without empathy. Extremes without empathy. That you had people on, pick any issue, vaccination, no vaccination, mask, no mask, political, racial, extremes with no empathy. Much like those German and Allied soldiers in those trenches. Groeschel says that when we are in that situation, what we do is we listen to respond. We do not listen to understand. Groeschel confessed that he had to work toward He said he was a person of very strong opinions. He says you can't be a leader without having such opinions, but that to really lead a diverse group of people in his church, he had to understand people with different viewpoints and respect people with different viewpoints. That doesn't necessarily mean that he changed his mind, but if he was going to lead them, if he was going to speak to them, he had to understand and respect. Your family, your friends at this holiday Christmas season may not approximate German and Allied soldiers in World War I. But chances are that your life is filled with people who are in the other trench. And I would encourage you to gain empathy, to listen, to understand, to genuinely try to understand other people and respect their viewpoints. You can't lead them, and I don't think you can really talk to them without that. That's my hope and my prayer at this holiday season as we celebrate Christmas on Friday. I pray that we will begin the process of healing and reconciliation. We can ask why other people are not laying down their arms, but it takes a risk on our part to climb out of the trench, to extend a hand, and to welcome someone else. God bless you. Merry Christmas.